To me, that starts with being uneducated. I remember one of the first things I learned going into the mosque was that knowledge was incumbent upon me from that day until the day Allah called me home. I was like, whoa, that's like no one's ever told me that. And then you understand why it is, because Allah said He has no use for an ignorant worshiper. I have no benefit, and nobody benefits from that. So for me, it's like when we see that, whether it's in Afghanistan, Denver, or China, it generally stems from ignorance, and it's ignorance of the perpetrator as well as the victim. And I think to change that, we have to educate everybody, and in particularly the women. I mean, it's easy for your husband to come home and say something, asinine as, this is against Islam. And if I'm illiterate, and sometimes I'm talking literally, people are illiterate. They have the book, but if they're unable to read it, then what their husband says ends up being valid. And what's even more frightening, it becomes Islam. Well, my husband said, my father said, the Imam said, that Allah says. But if I can't open the Quran and read what Allah says, then again, that kind of stuff becomes Islam.
Sister Sam? So you would say that it would be as opposed to mistreatment of women, it would be, because my question was, that is the problem with the world, it's mistreatment of women.
I would say really the lack of having spirituality or fearing in God. I mean, really, that's probably where I would go with it, and very similar to what Asiyah said, because, I mean, even if you look at the history of Islam, when Islam did, rule in a certain part of the world for X amount of years and generations and things like that, people were still able to worship. If they were Jewish, they were Jewish. If they were this, they were that. But they were respected in that, And now, Christianity is dominant, but Muslims aren't respected in being able to have their own autonomy, and being Muslim. There has to be picked out, something's wrong, something's this, something's that. I mean, it's like I teach my daughter, you don't have to tell somebody that they're wrong. You don't have to start your sentence with no. That's automatically defensive to whoever it is that you're talking to. All you can say is, well, this is what I believe, And in having honest dialogue about what you believe, and if you were being religious, then I'm automatically going to respect, that's your beliefs. I may disagree with you, but that's your beliefs, To you be yours, to me be mine, But I think, overall, going back to your question, I really think it comes down with, not having the faith enough to believe and actually practice kind of something, what we were saying earlier, in being that example, whatever religion you are, being that example,
Right. But going back to that, I mean, just in the Muslim world, do you think that mistreatment of the woman is a problem? I mean, not just in our community, but I mean in the Muslim world in general.
Yeah, I would say it's a problem.
I would say that there's many problems. That would be,
one of them.
Yeah, I mean, that would be one of them. Poverty's another. Hunger's another one. We always gonna have ills, but I really think it's up to the leaders to address those ills. In regards to whatever it is. So in regards to, if I'm looking at a percentage, is it a 95? I wouldn't go, in the higher scale at all. But I would definitely say that there are philosophies and culture that, is not part of Islam that does need to be corrected. And I think that would be up to the leaders, to definitely correct it, and then you start with self, you don't allow it, She's moving boundaries, by being just who she is. I don't think she set out to say, I am woman, hear me roar, and, neither did I, but just by being essentially who you are, and passing that down.
Praise be to Allah.
And not letting the men stop you.
Depending solely on Allah, all right? That's what's up. That's what's up. Now, question, because you're both mothers, and sister says she's a grandmother.
Yeah, mashallah, beautiful little girl.
what challenges do Muslim women face in regards to raising a family in this particular society?
All the sex. I mean, really all the sex and all, I mean, anytime you turn, you could be sitting there watching something wholesome.
Or so you thought.
And so you thought, and the bubblegum commercial coming, and the girl, she jump on the boy with her parents. Why would they do that? I mean, you know, it's just all the stuff that's around. And you could just turn off the TV altogether, and then you walk out, and then you got the boys and the girls and the, you know, and the same sexes, and just, it's just so much that goes on that it's hard to really shield them, you know. So the only way you have to do is just talk to them straight up and say, okay, this is how they are, and this is how, you know, they feel that they'd like to live their life, but this is what God says about it, you know, it's what the law says, you know, and try to give them that spin or educate them that way. But it's very difficult, even, you know, it's just entertainment, you know, because it's so much so. I think even, you know, conservative Christians or anything like that, I think they would agree there's just so much stuff that's bombarding the kids.
Right.
I think one of the things that happens too is, because when you ask the question specifically, like what are the challenges for Muslim women raising children, I think our challenges are pretty much the challenges of any mother, regardless of her faith. But I think what happens is where we all fail is that, first of all, we don't come together collectively. You know, we have this thing as human beings that we want to look at our differences and then, you know, separate and divide as a result of that, rather than look at the similar interests and causes that we have. Because raising our children, no mother wants a teenage pregnant daughter. You know what I'm saying? No mother wants a drug-addicted kid. You know, and most mothers want to see their kids graduate high school and go on to college and, you know, be gainfully employed after that. So those are things that we have in common, but I think, again, we fail to come together at it. It's one of those things where the good people remain silent. And so things like this, you know, the nonsense that you can, you know, watch on television, you know, I've seen crazy billboards, you know, so it's gone from, for me, it's gone to another step where we don't just like say this is entertainment. It's almost to a point where we're actually encouraging the behavior. Like, well, have you thought about this? Maybe you want to try getting with, you know, dude over here, kind of thing. So, and to me, it's like a whole nother level. So my concern is that I would like to see us actually just come together as parents and say, okay, you're Muslim, I'm Christian, you're whatever, let's come together and let's clean up our society, let's clean up our school, let's clean up our television. You know, I think that'd be a good place to start. Because I think most of the stuff that offends Muslim people, I think there's a lot of people other than Muslims that are offended by it. But again, I think we remain silent and it flourishes.
True indeed. That is so true. Just in regards to that, though, I mean, on a daily, how do we combat that? I mean, as you know, not just as Muslim women, but like you said, as mothers, is it just constant training? I mean, because our children are bombarded, you know, on the daily via television, via their friends, via
I kept it so real with my daughters. I mean, especially when they were, you know, I have 3 daughters actually. 2 of actually are adults already. My God, I don't know where that went, but I remember when I would be driving them to school, or we would just be running errands, I would use every opportunity to try and teach them. I get a few times, you know, we're driving, you know, it's a 30-degree morning, you know, it's snow on the ground, and there is this 15-year-old on the bus stop with a baby in a stroller. You know, and we would just talk about how did she get there? Because what happens is everybody looks at that, but nobody looks at the road to that, which is one of the things I love about Islam, because people see Islam as being so restrictive, but Allah says, you know, this act over here is haram and forbidden, but the things that lead to that road, steer clear of. Where they may not be in the classification of haram, but they will lead you to the haram. So to me, that's one of the beauties of Islam, is that it protected you from going there. So for me, I just use like real life situations with my daughter, and honestly just try to keep it real, because I think the worst thing we can do is try to you know, to shield them from the real world, and then at a certain age throw them into it and say, okay, you know, good luck, because we'd be actually, you know, going on just luck if we hadn't properly prepared them. So for me, it was giving them this balance of this is what that looks like, and these are the things that will get you there, so these are the things you steer clear of, and then giving them just, I mean, they lived with the realities. They had friends that were teenage parents, and, you know, with in sexually transmitted diseases and dropouts, and I would tell them that you have to choose to want something different and then make choices to get you there. And then one of the things too is tell them that when you want to be successful, you have to hang out with people that are successful. If this is what you want, then